the NF Audio Ra05. Let's talk about it. This is a single dynamic driver USB-C cable IEM. It is a very interesting product, and we're gonna go and first talk about the build quality, and this was sent by NF Audio as a sample for me to review along with 2 kazoos and 2 other IEMs. Let's talk about that build quality. Now, this is a very small IEM, maybe the smallest IEM that I've ever reviewed on channel. It is extremely flat. You can notice it's like 3 times the size of the Afu Magic 1, which is actually pretty dainty for my ears. The nozzle size is pretty tiny. It does have a nice symbol on the front. I like the design. It is comfortable. How you can see the dynamic driver right here, and the faceplate is pretty. It has the NF Audio symbol on the front. But if you compare it to the Afu Magic 1, which I consider to be kind of my normal generic IEM, it is exceedingly tiny. So, you know, that's something to note if you want a tiny IEM. There is a nice little pouch that comes with this. It has nice build quality. It feels good. It comes with some nice set of tips, has some additional filters. It's a nice little set of tips and no real problems with the accessories, especially at this price point. The cable is something I want to talk about. This is a USB-C cable, so it does have some, plays, pause buttons. The cable is a little bit tangly, but it's overall not bad. The IEMs themselves are not detachable, which is something I want you guys to note as we untangle this thing. It does have a nice little slide, chin slider. The Y split is cool. It has the NF Audio symbol on it. Has a little NF Audio USB-C plug on this. So let's talk about the sound. How does this thing sound? It sounds tinny. It sounds boxy. It doesn't sound that great. It's not a bad IEM by any means, but it doesn't really sound that great. It's not something that I personally would reach for and listen to. All right, the NF Ra02 graph. Let's look at this thing. It's kind of interesting. You'll notice it kind of has this weird lean bass, kind of this weird hook right here. It's, again, it makes noise. It's kind of weird. Its tonality doesn't really fit something that I personally enjoy. There's a lot of problems with this graph and with the fit in this IEM, which makes some problems. To get a good idea of what this graph is kind of like, I wanted to show you this IEM and normalize it at different values. You can normalize this by tapping here, right here on the hertz. And like if I wanted to normalize this at say 100, you'll notice at 100 hertz, it'll match up right with my graph. And so you can do that at normal places. Most people normalize around 440 or sometimes even 500 depending. So let's look at a few other places where this is normalized and such. So another place I normalize this is at 500. You can notice there's just a ton of treble for me. And that's kind of one of its big faults, is that it's very bright and its tonal balance is a little bit odd. It might be a driver thing. It might just be, what we're getting out of here. It might be a fit problem, but it just doesn't really sound that great in ear. And it's not something that I personally would enjoy. This is normalizing this at 8K. Now, I haven't even adjusted my target curve to compensate for what I consider to be a normal 8K peak, but this is a lot of 8K energy, and that's just something to kind of note. Again, if you match it where it's like too bright, all of a sudden everything else becomes low and kind of weird. And so when you keep raising that up, we normalize this at say 1,000. And you can tell, like, even there, it looks kind of fine, but then you'll notice the bass is really off. The mids are off, like the lower mids. And then, the upper treble kind of air region is just completely bonkers. I did review recently the NA2 Plus, and I thought it had good technicalities, a little bit more even kiltered treble. I thought it was a little bit better, and I thought it was a reasonable IEM, and I would recommend that better. I thought it had better fit, better comfort, and it's something I probably would actually want to listen to and recommend, but not something that I particularly loved. Another one that they sent with me in this package that I have not reviewed yet, but is probably the best of the lot, is the Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'll probably be coming out here in about a week. And this is a pretty strong V with a lot better bass. I mean, it does have its problems too, but I think the Ra02 it might be the weakest of the three, just from a listening standpoint. From a technicality standpoint, I think it's really not that great at all. And so that's kind of my fault that I have, is that it's technicalities, it's air region, it's a lot of problems with that, and the fact that it's hard to fit in ear makes it something that's not enjoyable. You can't really cable swap, and it's only USB-C, which can be problematic if you want to use this from, say, an iPhone or other sources. I don't necessarily mind USB-Cs, but it creates issues. One more I wanted to look at and talk to you about is an EQ. I would probably EQ this IEM. I did think it sounded much better with this EQ. Was it perfect? I don't think so, but you can EQ using SquigLink. It's something to note. It's not perfect, but I think this IEM needs EQ for it to work for people, and even with EQ, it didn't sound that great, and it's not something I would fully recommend for what it is. So how do I rank this thing? It's honestly one of the worst IEMs that I've encountered. I guess my big thing with this IEM is not that it's per se bad. It's that I think with a Type-C USB-C IEM, it has a lot of potential. You could use that Type-C connector for DSP and maybe DSP correct that IEM and make it a little bit better. I think that's something they could have done, and they should have done, and they should have spent a little bit more money. There are a lot of options that are USB-C cable IEMs, like the Moondrop May, like the Chew Dusk, and I'm not always a person to claim that you have to do Harman, but maybe something to do would be, you know, give somebody an option to do a Harman or a JM1, something that's a little bit easier to tolerate. There's a lot of IEMs out there, and there's a lot of IEMs with USB-C cable. So this IEM is a very interesting IEM in this market. So while this IEM is not for me, it might be for you. If you're somebody that EQs and you really need a very, very tiny IEM, I think this could be a good option. Personally, I think it's a little bit too small for me. I think the sound of this isn't really fantastic, and I found other IEMs that are cheaper than this that have, I think, a better sound, but it's not completely terrible, but it's not something that gets a recommend for me without EQ. And so if you're not willing to do that, I think you might be better off with many other IEMs. And if this is a starter IEM for you, again, I would only really recommend this if you really like the design. Like if you're on the fence thinking, oh man, should I get this or not? Yeah, I mean, if you're not a huge snob about audio, this doesn't sound absolutely terrible, and I could see some people enjoying it and liking it. But in a slew of IEM land where there's, you know, when you're talking to a guy who's listened to as many IEMs as I have, it just doesn't get a recommendation for me at this price and with this tune. Again, I still think that there should be some DSP correction to whatever these drivers are doing. I think a removable cable might be a nice feature for this, though, in case the USB-C cable gets damaged or people want to swap it out. But the accessories are fine. It's a cute looking IEM, and with EQ, it becomes a lot better. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. You're still here. It's over. Go home. Go watch another IEM video. It's done. That's the entire video. What more do you want?